Because this is the thing about the whole innocence of the child thing that people like to say. It's not necessarily about acting like a child or an infant. It's about being willing to be the dumbass in the room who needs to learn. That's what keeps you innocent in terms of taking things in. Because a child is consistently in the room, and it's like, I don't know what's going on. You know, I'm here to learn. But when people get into this mindset of being an adult, they like to think, oh, I know. I should be like this. I should do this. I should know. And then you start to fuck yourself up. Okay, so when you're talking about allowing yourself to be a child, because there's two parts here. I'm going to go into the child part first, and then I'm going to come back around to the man. When you're allowing yourself to be childlike, as in the purity of heart, because I talk to a lot of my clients about this, and one of the things I tell them is that something that people like to do is hold others to the standard of adulthood, which is an effect of us holding ourselves to the standard of adulthood. But what I like to remind them is that just as much as my client is still that child within themselves, everyone you're talking to is. You can have somebody 50 years old and they never grew past a 13-year-old child, and they continue to act like that. And it's not that it's right or wrong. It's the effect of the process they put themselves through. And so what I suggest is at least for yourself, allowing yourself to not have to be held to the standard of adulthood. Now, mind you, other people in the physical world aren't necessarily going to be in agreement to this, mostly because they're not here to do the work you're here to do, so you kind of shouldn't expect them to be in agreement with it. They run in a different race than you are. It's like if you was running on a track team, and you hit the track and you running, and you see the audience sitting there, and you're getting further and further away from the audience, so you think you're doing a good job. But really, you running a race with somebody else. The audience ain't even in your race. And so most of these motherfuckers who came here to be dead are not going to agree with what you have to say, what you're going to do, because you ain't running a race, and they don't have any conception of what it means to run the race you run. Like, I come from metaphysics. Like, I was doing metaphysics before I fell on Panic and Bobby and Phil. And so that's the place I come from. So I'm always looking for the archetypal structure, the order. I'm not the kind of motherfucker who's just like, oh, I'm going to say Kundalini over here, I'm going to say chakra, I'm going to say subconscious mind, and try and mix it all together and hope somebody gets it. Like, no, we're going to put some lines down and we're going to say, this is that, fight me about it. And then we're going to come to an agreement and figure out what this is. But, I had to fight myself, but that's a whole different story. But when it comes to self-deification, it's so much more than saying I am God. Because there's two things to that, the idea of God. First of all, most people associate the word with God for a character in the Bible. But in actuality, what you want to be looking at is a position, an office, a title. It's not a character. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm.
And from what I'm listening to, it sounds like you're still selling the idea that you're something greater to yourself. It sounds like you're still trying to sell that idea to yourself. Like, one of the things that irritates me sometimes with the spiritual people is that they'll get excited about stuff like the physical world is all connected. Like, nigga, if you, the one thing is everything, that shit is basic. And if it still surprises you, it's probably because you're playing human. You feel me? Like, I get how a little kid would be surprised and amazed about tying your shoe. You know, this is completely brand new shit. What the fuck? How the hell did you do that? But if you've grown as hell and still surprised by your shoe being tied, something's off. But these other folks that you fuck with out here who's not cut from the same cloth as you, it's okay for them to be surprised by that because they're not going to go nearly as far as you can go easily. And so if you continue to measure yourself by the standards that they live by, you're going to diminish your own capacity. They'll be doing exactly what they're supposed to do, but you'll be the only nigga in the room not doing what you're supposed to do. Because you ain't like them. It's like that ugly duckling thing, where you got the little swan baby in the midst of all these ducklings, and he's trying to keep up with these niggas, but nigga, you a swan. What the fuck you out here doing duck shit for? You ain't even supposed to look like these niggas. You ain't supposed to do none of this shit like these niggas. But then one day he realized, oh shit, I'm a swan? Oh, so I ain't supposed to be doing none of that shit. I mean, yeah, we birds and yeah, we on the water, but nigga, I'm a different thing than you are. Well, I mean, if you are, then you gotta figure out, well, why do I feel I need to read? Like, why am I still selling this to myself? What part of me don't believe this yet? Or what part of me is still amazed that I'm me? That's where people fall short, because they get in here, and then most of this spiritual stuff they're doing is posing, trying to make you convince themselves that there's something else. You're contradicting yourself on the face immediately. Like simply telling yourself, having to convince yourself that you're this thing. Like that's why affirmations run dry eventually. Because let's say you spend 3 years on the same affirmation, and eventually it's gonna have to start working against you. Because you're like, nigga, who you trying to convince? You still don't believe it yet?
Right.
So that's my thing about affirmations. It's not that you should never use them. You got to use them in context. Like anything, if you overuse it, you're gonna fuck yourself up.
Right, because it's like they do work. You know what I'm saying? Don't allow it to become a prayer or some shit.
Exactly. Because eventually you got a motherfucker sitting here giving himself the affirmation like, I'm not fat. I'm not fat. I'm not fat. Eventually, you gonna say, I'm not fat, and it's gonna mean the exact opposite. You just gonna feel everything you're trying to hide from. And the symbol of everything you're trying to hide from will become, I'm not fat.
Right.
And that's the thing, they end up programming themselves to their own detriment. The idea of being a man can be a bit confusing, because masculinity and males are not the same thing. Masculine and feminine are archetypes. Male and female contain one another, so both of them are inherently androgynous. Okay, so the idea of being a man falls somewhere in between the two. I'll put a little bit of this in there, because like I like to say, man, I'm trying to put the man back in manifestation. These motherfuckers are feminized spirituality and fucked up masculinity. One of the things people generally don't look at about masculinity, and it kind of tails into the nature of males, is that females dictate what masculinity is, the same way males dictate what femininity is. And males, we haven't held women to any type of standard for what it means to be a woman. In fact, a woman can do whatever the fuck she wants and never lose her femininity. But when it comes to a male, the list is long of the things that they will consider you lose your masculinity for. And see, this is part of that thing where, they're throwing dirt on you. And like the idea of gay. That's a really big thing, because there's so much a dude can do to get thrown into that pool.
Man, what makes a nigga be gay?
But I think it's like this, because when you look at female sexuality, it's very expansive. There's plenty of different outlets and ways it moves. But to think male sexuality doesn't do that is oppressive to males, because it does. And so because we've allowed females to define what it means for us to be male or masculine, we've lost that part of ourselves. Not to say you need to go out and start sucking some dick or something. I'm not saying nothing like that. But I'm saying there's more to what makes a man in masculinity over his sex. And the idea of what we consider sexuality is very, very constricted when it comes to males. And so I can understand why that's a sensitive topic for a lot of people, and why it can be extremely confusing. But I would say it like this, man. It's
like social constructs and stuff.
Yeah, no, you're good. It's this social construct. And one of the things I kind of want to bring to some of the guys out here is that to truly tap into that masculinity, you're gonna have to root out the things where you're allowing other people to define it for you. And it's like, cause there's some masculine men out there who like men, and it's not that they're any less of a man. They don't do what men generally expected to do, and to throw all those men into this pool of this what's the word I want to use? This tainted pool called gay, and strip them of their masculinity is harsh. It's very harsh. But also at the same time, it's kind of an aspect of masculinity. One of the things, another thing people don't speak about too often is that in our culture, in most cultures throughout all of existence, actually throughout nature as well, now that I think about it, males are generally disposable. Women come with intrinsic value. Men have to prove their value. Well, they're going to say all kind of things. They don't know what they want. They know how they want to feel, just like a child. Do you, and let her react. Because they're reactionary. They react to things. They don't just do something. They call that boring. If there's nothing to react to, the world is boring for them.
Right. I can see how me being myself and letting those reactions program me and shape me.
And she feed right back into it, because that's what she's looking for. If you just don't react or you give no emotion from it, she's done. She has nothing else to feed off of, nothing to loop back, nothing to react to, and she's stuck there with herself. That's why Patrice be saying you gotta be cold sometimes. And she's looking for that emotion to react to, because that's how they communicate. That's how females and children communicate.